on the great Tiger Woods biography. Came out last week. If you don't get it and you want to know something, it's phenomenal. Armen, let's start with, we got to do something on the women here. I'm not sure how to handle it. I mean, he's you go through sex addiction and everything else. 120 women, supposedly, at the end of the day, maybe more. Everybody, even including, the next door neighbor to his house in Orlando, Jordan in Vegas, big issue there too.
Yeah.
Do you have you guys able to pinpoint where you bring up the girlfriend and he blew off out there in Stanford? Do you get a feel of where this mess began?
Oh yeah.
Where was it that this kind of began?
It was in Vegas, no question. Early 2000. He became fast friends with Michael Jordan, really starting in '97 after he wins the Masters, and he goes to Cog Hill in Chicago and takes over the town for 4 days, and it's Tiger Mania is really hitting at that point in time. But he begins this friendship with Michael Jordan, two probably the most popular athletes on the face of the earth at that point in time, and then he gets to know Barkley. Charles is a very different person in Las Vegas than Michael. The reputations are diametrically opposed.
Barkley, a good guy. Jordan, the worst guy in America.
Jordan is known for being very cheap, very entitled. Your tip is being able to carry his bag someplace.
You're
that's
doing
it.
him a favor. He's doing you a favor by letting you be around him for a few minutes. Right.
So, but Vegas at that period of time is going through a renaissance in terms of the club scene. So, which was interesting because the Bellagio, Steve Wynn's hotel, opens up the first really high-end nightclub called Light. And Tiger is there on the VVIP night of the opening of Light. And it changes the whole social scene in Vegas. It's the $300 bottle service. It's the white glove treatment. It's VIP host. He's staying at the Mansion, which is a private enclave behind the MGM. It's 29 villas. It's for the highest rollers in Vegas that come and stay there. And Tiger loves to gamble. He's a blackjack guy. He's very smart with numbers, and he becomes a whale. He's spending early on, maybe $25 he starts with, but in the end, he's got $1 million credit limit in Las Vegas. There's only 100 guys in the United States that have that kind of limit. That's where the women come in. And when you're young, let's be honest. I mean, he's young. He's not married. He's the most famous athlete on the world. Women are falling all over him. He's taking advantage of it as time goes on. And I know far more about sex addiction now than I probably should talk about because I've talked to a lot of sex addiction experts. And what happens is the women just become a form of pain relief. It's like alcohol. It's like drugs. It's like gambling. It's a sedative. It's an attempt to bury the pain that he's feeling about his childhood and about his relationships with his parents and everything else. Not to get too psychological about it, but it all traces back to the family dynamic.
You know what I was going to say, actually, Chris? I don't disagree with where Armen. You asked Armen where did this start, and I don't disagree with Armen, but my answer to that would be the roots of what happened in Vegas and thereafter are in Cypress, California, in a little ranch home.
Yeah.
And one of the saddest moments in this book is when Tiger is on the phone with his high school girlfriend and he's crying and he's describing the infidelity of his father to his girlfriend. If you want to know where all this business began,
that is where it began.
That's the apple not falling very far from the tree story.
Wow.
And that's all of these stories are. We're all about fathers and sons, Chris. I mean, come on. These stories, at the end of the day, all come back to home. And Tiger's home it's a unique place, but he's not unique in the sense that
it's a dysfunctional home.
Yeah, and
let me just say this though too, because I don't want to sound too like I'm speaking in a church here. Nobody was in the position that he was as the most famous athlete on the planet.
That's right.
Where women are throwing themselves
and he's single,
at him.
It's hard to say
he's
no.
single, and even if he's married, I'm not saying it's right or wrong here, and but it's, let's just be real and understand that he had more temptation than almost anybody can imagine.
I was talking to a CEO the other day who was trying to tell me This guy's in his 60s, and he was very upset that Tiger's bad example, the infidelity and all that, and he was trying to tell me, I've been in situations where women approach me because I'm a CEO.
Nonsense.
And I was like,
He's a
give me a break.
Dude, you have no idea.
Tiger was in that situation when he was 19 years old. I mean, he had millions of dollars in his bank account when he was a 21-year-old. You didn't become what you are until you were, 50. It's a completely different situation.
You got a big gut, and you're no hair. I don't want to hear from you.
But here's the other thing, though, and this is where it gets dark, is you are married to one of the most beautiful women on the planet, who is very smart, very funny.
Did he love her when he married her?
Yeah, I think he thought he did. But
he buys the resort in Barbados for $1.5 million, the greatest stay of our lives, blah blah blah.
She was the perfect vision that fit the profile.
I understand
for Tiger.
But did he love her?
I mean, I don't know.
That's a hard question to answer.
But let me say, when you're sleeping with the girl, literally almost the girl next door, and you're sleeping with the pancake waitress that's serving you breakfast, things start to get a little dysfunctional at that point in time. And when you're spending tens of thousands of dollars to bring girls in, escorts in from all around the country into Southern California, or you're in Chicago and you want somebody, it became an addiction for him. And the question is why? And what I was told is, it doesn't matter. It's a form of pain relief. He was just such a complicated, messed up guy at that point in time.
And Armen that's the sex addiction aspect of this, and you explain it well, and I think you're right. It started in that little house. But the lack of civility is a problem. Which is, you can tie it in because he doesn't respect women, so he's not going to respect anybody. This is a guy who wouldn't look you in the eye. This is a guy who expected things to be done his way, who blew off trainers, who blew off, nobody got paid who worked with him early on in his life, blew off to Steve Scott in the third year, when he's trying to win the amateur third year in a row. He tells him, Tiger, you got to remark the ball. He doesn't even acknowledge the fact that he saved him the tournament. I mean, this is a guy who, blew off Marco Mara, his best buddy, when he was getting honored in Britain. I mean, there is a different aspect to just being...
it's being a human being.
He doesn't have these qualities for a long period of his life.
And I don't want to oversimplify this in my answer, Chris, but again, a lot of these things that you're talking about that Tiger has exhibited, we start our book by showing you Earl exhibiting those things. When Tiger's a junior golfer, and unlike team sports where you travel with teams, when you go on the road, Tiger traveled with his dad. When he went on the road as a junior, he was with his dad. He slept where his dad slept. He stayed with his dad. He was purposely separated from the other junior golfers. He was with his dad all the time. Earl was not a guy he was never shy about asking for stuff. He wanted a house. He wanted someone to chauffeur them around. He wanted nice things. But he didn't utter the words, thank you. I mean, we interviewed so many people who drove them around, who gave up their homes, who fed them, and not one of them could recall a time when Earl Woods ever said thank you.
Now, the father's a louse, but why couldn't Tiger see the difference between right and wrong and act a little differently?
Because he wasn't programmed that way. He was programmed to believe that he was special from the very start.
And he's not unique. And
No.
Just so, like to Armen's point a minute ago about the women, and again, to be fair, there's a lot, you know this, Chris. I mean, athletes get to be pampered. When you are the best at something in high school or college, people treat you differently, and it allows you to treat people the way you shouldn't treat them. Tiger's not unique in that. He's just probably more magnified because he was the biggest. But we've covered more than our fair share of athletes.
He's the worst, from what I can get. Jordan's a bad guy too. But
when Jeff talked to Peggy Lewis, who was the woman who Tiger stayed
passage about
in the house.
Tell him that story. Go ahead.
Jeff, you tell it because you reported it.
We were interested in where Tiger stayed when he was going to Augusta when he first became a pro, and he started staying with the O'Mearas because the O'Mearas were staying in the same house every year. It belonged to this woman named Peggy Lewis, a school teacher. She'd rent the house out like a lot of other people in Augusta, and the O'Mearas took very good care of her. They paid her well, they tipped her well, and then Tiger started staying there, and the owner, Peggy Lewis, was thrilled to have Tiger Lewis staying in my house. The first time she got to meet him was when Mark O'Meara won the Masters. And she came over to the house to congratulate Mark and Alicia. They're like family. And then Tiger came in, and this was like a big moment for her. She gets to meet Tiger Woods, who's sleeping in her house. And that's all she wanted. and she introduced herself in front of the other people that were there, and Tiger basically looked at her, didn't extend his hand, stared at her in awkward silence, and then looked at Alicia and asked her a question, and left this woman standing there with her hand extended in front of her friends. And it crushed her. I mean, it was like, that was one of those moments where if he'd have just shaken her hand, she's a fan for life. But instead, it turned out to be that. And yet, for years after that, Tiger would stay in her home. Mark usually sometimes wasn't around for the weekend.
Didn't make the cut. Right.
But Tiger always made the cut. And so Mark would leave, Tiger would stay in the house. Mark's paying for the house. Mark's tipping, but Tiger's staying there. And there came a point where Peggy just got sick of it because there'd be damage, burn holes.
Dishes all over the place.
Burn holes from someone's cigarette. Obviously, Tiger doesn't smoke, so it's not him. But someone's putting out cigarettes in her brand new table. The O'Mearas end up
on
buying
a dining room table.
Brand new dining room table.
Putting out cigarette butts on a dining room table.
And she, the O'Mearas always...
Yeah, Earl Woods, yeah.
Well, and the O'Mearas always did the right thing. They quietly bought her a new table, or they bought her new pots and pans, or whatever needed to be done. But at the last time they'd had enough with it was the first time Elin had stayed there. And it's interesting, Mark... Chris, is that the year before, a different girlfriend with Tiger,
who was pretty good. Yeah.
Joanna Jagoda writes a handwritten thank you note, made the world to Peggy
Elin
Lewis.
Does nothing. She does nothing.
Nothing happened.
I'm down on her for that too. You think? And then she makes all the phone. Who goes into a rented house and makes phone calls to Sweden? Nobody does that.
Somebody from Sweden.
That's it. What is she doing? I mean, have a little sense, please.
Well, or just say I made these phone calls. Just
acknowledge
tell us,
it.
And then
when Peggy Lewis called Tiger's assistant to say, look, somebody's got to pay for these bills, these phone bills, it was like, send us the bills, and then they send her a check to the penny of what the calls were. And I was looking at that going, after all the years of staying in that house and all that she's done,
give her $25,000.
Yeah.
Gee whiz!
Just take care of her.
Absolutely, boy. Jeff and Armen, we continue on Tiger Woods. Stick with us here on Mad Dog.